Have you ever found yourself trying to figure out if one thing truly causes another?
Oh, all the time.
Right. Maybe you're tracking your sleep, wondering if that new evening routine genuinely leads to deeper rest.
Or reading about some new policy and questioning if it's really the thing driving better outcomes.
Exactly. We do this constantly, personally, and when we try to make sense of the bigger picture. But here's the kicker. What if there's an invisible influence? Something entirely different that's secretly pulling the strings.
Yeah.
What if it's affecting both the thing you're looking at and the outcome, making them seem related when they're just not?
Yeah, that can lead you way off track. You draw conclusions that are just plain wrong.
And this critical challenge, this hidden influence in data, scientists call it confounding.
That's the one.
And today, on the deep dive, we're going to tackle confounding head on. We're unpacking a brand new study just out July 2025, published in JAMA Network Open. It's by Correia, Mascarenhas, and their colleagues.
And it's a really timely piece.
It is. It's not just some dry paper. It's a fascinating look, really, behind the scenes at how these leading medical and epidemiological journals are handling, or maybe not handling, this crucial issue.
Right.
Our mission today is basically to give you a shortcut to understanding what this means for the science you encounter, every day.
That's right. Our mission today, it's pretty clear. We're going to demystify what confounding really means, dig into why it's such a huge deal for any research trying to pin down cause and effect.
Which is so much research.
Exactly. And most importantly, what this new study tells us about how well even the top-tier science is meeting the challenge. You might actually find some of the results a bit surprising.
I think so, too.
And I can almost guarantee that by the end of this deep dive, it'll change how you approach reading any study claiming cause and effect. This isn't just, academic navel-gazing.
No, not at all.
It's about empowering you, the listener, to be a more discerning consumer of information, especially when it comes to things like health or policy, areas where good evidence really, really matters. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think a classic example really drives the point home about confounding.
Yeah, the famous one.
Yeah. Imagine you stumble upon a study, right? And it shows people who eat more ice cream also have a statistically higher risk of shark attacks.
Okay.
Now, your first thought might be, hold on, does ice cream attract sharks? Should I, ditch my Ben & Jerry's?
Hopefully not.
Of course not. That'd be a wild conclusion. Totally wrong. So what's the hidden factor? What connects these two things that seem totally unrelated?
There's got to be something else.
It's summer.
Right.
Summer heat. It's hot, so people naturally eat more ice cream.
Makes sense.
And because it's hot, people also spend more time swimming in the ocean, which unfortunately increases their chances of running into a shark.
Okay. The common link.
Exactly. So summer heat isn't directly causing ice cream eating or shark attacks, but it influences both, making them look linked. That summer heat is our confounder. It's that unmeasured thing or poorly measured thing that creates this false association.
That's a perfect analogy. It really illustrates how confounding works in actual scientific research, especially in what we call observational study.
Right, where you're just watching, not controlling things in a lab.
Precisely. Unlike those tightly controlled lab experiments, observational studies just observe what's happening. They might track groups of people over time or look at data at one point in time without directly intervening.
Okay.
And in those settings, confounders are these variables that influence both the exposure, that could be anything, a drug, a diet, an environmental factor.
Like the ice cream.
Like the ice cream, yeah.
Yeah.
And they also influence the outcome, like getting a disease or recovering from one.
Like the shark attack.
Exactly. And if these confounders aren't properly identified and crucially adjusted for in the analysis.
The adjustment part.
Yes, if they're not accounted for, the study might wrongly conclude there's a causal link between the exposure and the outcome. Ice cream causes shark attacks.
Which we know isn't true.
Right. And this is why correctly identifying and adjusting for confounders is just absolutely essential for any study trying to make strong causal claims. Without that step, you could be basing really important decisions on just correlation, not actual causation.
That seems fundamental.
It is. And thinking on how to handle this has really evolved, especially in recent years. It's not just an old problem.
Okay.
For a long time, researchers might have used these, let's call them traditional statistical approaches, like the change in estimate strategy.
Change in estimate.
Yeah, it basically looks at how much the estimated effect, the link between exposure and outcome, changes when you add or remove another variable, a potential confounder, from the statistical model.
Okay. Sounds mathematical.
It is, but now those methods are largely seen as, well, inadequate. They often don't really capture the complex causal relationships happening underneath.
Oh, it's better.
The current recommendations really push for what's called an informed approach. This means researchers should base their choice of confounders on theoretical models, thinking about how things actually work in the real world.
Like based on biology or social science theory.
Exactly. Often this involves using visual tools like directed acyclic graphs, or DAGs.
DAGs, okay.
Think of a DAG as like a roadmap for causation. You draw variables like exposure, outcome, potential confounders, and use arrows to show the assumed cause and effect relationships between them.
Oh, okay, a visual map.
Precisely. Or if they don't use a DAG, they should at least thoroughly explain their causal thinking, their model, in the text of the paper. The key is thinking through the underlying causal pathways, not just relying on statistical correlations or automated methods like stepwise regression.
Stepwise regression.
Yeah, that's an automated statistical technique that adds or removes variables based purely on statistical significance. It can sometimes pick up on statistical noise rather than true confounding factors. So the shift is towards thinking causally first.
Got it. So this more thoughtful, theory-driven approach using DAGs, or explicit causal models, is the recommended way now.
That's the idea.
So with that crucial background understanding confounding, these hidden factors, and this shift toward DAGs and informed approaches, the big question is, are researchers actually doing this?
Right. Is best practice actually common practice?
Exactly. And that's what sparked this new study by Correia and colleagues. It wasn't just random. It's a direct response to this long-running concern. Way back in 2004, another study pointed out a big problem. Researchers often weren't justifying how they picked their confounders.
It was a known issue even then.
Yeah, a real wake-up call. And partly in response, this important reporting guideline came out called STROBE.
STROBE.
Yes, STROBE, Strengthening the Reporting of Observational Studies in Epidemiology. And STROBE really hammered home the need for studies to clearly define potential confounders and explain why they were chosen.
So setting a standard.
Right, so this new study basically asked, okay, it's been 2 decades since that first alarm bell and since STROBE came out. Have things actually gotten better? Have researchers really changed how they report this?
A fair question. So how did they investigate it?
Well, they designed what's called a cross-sectional study.
Okay, like a snapshot in time.
Exactly. They looked at studies published in specific years to see the state of play. First, they picked the 10 highest impact factor medical and epidemiological journals.
So the big hitters, impact factor meaning?
It's basically a measure of how often articles in that journal get cited, a proxy for influence and prestige, you could say.
Gotcha. Which journals were they?
For medical, think New England Journal of Medicine, The Lancet, JAMA, BMJ, Annals of Internal Medicine, real top-tier stuff.
Definitely. And for epidemiology?
Journals like European Journal of Epidemiology, International Journal of Epidemiology, Annals of Epidemiology, American Journal of Epidemiology, and Epidemiology itself. Again, leading journals in that field.
A very solid, influential list.
Okay. Then they systematically went through all the articles indexed in PubMed from these journals, but only for 3 specific years, 2003, 2013, and 2023.
Spanning 2 decades.
Right. And they were looking specifically for observational studies that were evaluating some kind of exposure outcome link where you'd expect them to adjust for confounders.
Okay, so not descriptive studies or purely predictive ones?
No, they carefully excluded those, focusing on studies trying to get at causality from observed data. And here's the crucial part. They classify the reported methods for selecting confounders into 6 distinct types.
Okay, what were the types?
First, simple, no confounder adjustment at all. Second, adjustment of confounders not specified. They said they adjusted, but didn't say for what.
Not very helpful.
Not really. Third, and this is key for our discussion, confounders selected without justification. They listed confounders, but gave no reason why those specific ones were chosen.
The black box approach.
Kinda, yeah. Fourth was confounders selected based on an established association with the outcome. So picking variables already known to link to the result.
Okay, some rationale there, but maybe incomplete.
Potentially. Fifth was confounders selected based on statistical criteria. That includes things like imbalance between groups, that change in estimate thing we mentioned,
Right.
or that automated stepwise regression.
Relying purely on the stats.
Exactly. And finally, the 6th category, the one representing best practice, confounders selected based on a causal model.
The informed approach.
Yes, either shown visually with a DAG, that causal map, or explained thoroughly in the text. This is a gold standard because it's based on theoretical understanding.
Got it. 6 clear categories ranging from nothing to the full causal model explanation.
Precisely.
So after meticulously sorting all these studies, what was the bottom line? What did they find overall?
Okay, so the overall snapshot across all 623 eligible studies, across all those years in top journals, it's pretty eye-opening and honestly a bit concerning.
Oh.
The single most common method reported for selecting confounders was without justification.
Still, after all this time.
Still. It accounted for a staggering 45.1% of all the studies, nearly half.
Wow.
Think about that. In the best journals, nearly half the studies didn't clearly explain why they chose the confounders they adjusted for. It's like saying, we tuned the engine, but not saying what they adjusted or why.
That's surprising. And what about the preferred method, the causal models?
That was starkly different. Only 6.7% overall reported using a causal model that informed theory-driven approach.
Only about 1 in 15 studies.
Right. So even though we kind of know what best practice looks like, its adoption seems, well, quite low.
Okay, that's the overall picture. But you mentioned they looked across time, 2003, 2013, 2023. Did things get better?
That's where the story gets even more interesting and maybe a bit more complex. Let's look at that without justification category first.
The most common one.
Yes. Did it go down over time? Well, it remained stubbornly high. In 2003, it was at 48.7%, almost half.
Okay.
By 2023, 2 decades later, it had only slightly decreased to 41.5%.
So still over 40%, even in 2023 in the top journals.
Exactly. Even in very recent research published in the best places, nearly half of these observational studies still aren't clearly justifying their confounder selection in the paper. It's a really persistent issue.
That suggests guidelines like STROBE maybe haven't had the full impact intended, or at least reporting hasn't fully caught up?
It seems that way. It indicates researchers are still often publishing studies where the rationale for controlling those hidden influences just isn't laid out clearly for the reader.
Okay, that's sobering. But was there any good news in the trends? What about the causal models? Did that increase?
Yes. Okay, now for the positive side, the use of a causal model, DAGs, or textual explanations, did see a significant and definitely welcome increase.
Okay. From what to what?
Back in 2003, it was basically 0%. None of the studies they reviewed used this explicit causal model approach.
Wow, 0.
But by 2023, it had climbed to 22.6%.
Okay, so from 0% to nearly 23%. That is a clear move in the right direction.
Definitely. It shows progress, a growing adoption of these more rigorous, thoughtful methods.
Yeah.
But, the pace feels maybe a bit slow.
Yeah, 23% is better than 0, but it's still less than a quarter of studies using the recommended approach.
Right. And just for a bit more detail, overall, across all years, there were 42 studies that used causal models. Out of those, 35 specifically used DAGs, those visual maps, and 7 provided textual explanations of their causal assumptions.
So DAGs are becoming the more common way to show that causal thinking.
It seems so. But the bottom line is, while progress is happening, fewer than 1 in 4 studies are currently reporting this best practice. It's like, some researchers are still using those old paper maps when GPS is available.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, so overall, justification is lacking, but causal model use is slowly rising. Were there any other interesting nuances, like differences between fields?
Yeah, they did find a few distinctions. For instance, epidemiological journals used causal models slightly more often than the general medical journals. It was 7.3% in epi journals versus 5.6% in medical journals overall.
Which maybe makes sense. Epidemiology is fundamentally about causes of disease in populations.
Could be. They also looked at study design, cohort studies, following a group over time, like the big nurses' health study.
Right, long-term studies.
Those were more likely to report using causal models. Around 8.8% of them did.
Okay. More than case control or cross-sectional.
Yeah, much more. Case control studies, which look backward in time, and cross-sectional studies, those snapshots, both hovered around only 2.1% for using causal models.
Huh. Interesting. Maybe the longer-term perspective of cohort studies encourages more explicit causal thinking.
Perhaps. Or maybe the complexity demands it more. But these differences show that while the overall trend is slow, some areas are maybe adopting these methods a bit faster than others.
So let's pull this all together. What does this actually mean for us? For you, the listener, trying to make sense of science?
Yeah, what's the big implication here?
Well, this Correia study really shines a light on a significant ongoing challenge. Despite having clear recommendations, despite guidelines like STROBE, a really large chunk of observational studies, even in the absolute best journals, are still not adequately justifying why they chose the confounders they controlled for.
The what and why is often missing.
Exactly. And while the rise in causal model use is good news, it's definitely positive.
It is.
The pace is slow. And the overall picture, it honestly raises some serious questions about how strong the causal conclusions are from a lot of this research.
So when we see X causes Y based on an observational study,
You need to be critically aware of how they dealt with potential confounders. Did they explain their reasoning? Did they use an informed causal approach? If not, the evidence for causation might be weaker than the headline suggests.
that's a really crucial point. And we should also mention the study authors themselves were upfront about their own limitations, right?
Oh, absolutely. Good science always acknowledges limitations. For instance, they pointed out they focused on the reported methods.
What was written in the paper.
Exactly. It's possible some researchers are doing a better job selecting confounders behind the scenes than they actually write down in the paper, but the reporting itself is still key for transparency and reproducibility.
If it's not reported, we can't assess it.
Precisely. And another big point. Their findings are only from the highest impact journals.
The top 10.
Right. These journals usually have stronger reporting standards than many other publications.
So if the situation looks like this at the top,
It suggests the problem might be even more widespread, potentially worse, in journals with less rigorous standards or in broader scientific fields.
it really makes you think, doesn't it? If the gold standard isn't always meeting expectations on reporting, what's happening elsewhere?
It does. And based on all this, the authors didn't just report the findings. They issued a pretty clear call to action.
What do they recommend?
They emphasize that these results show a critical need for the journals themselves and for guideline groups like STROBE to provide much more explicit and rigorous guidance on what's required for confounder selection.
So tighten up the rules, basically.
Yeah, make the expectations clearer. This isn't just about making papers look neater or ticking boxes. It's fundamental. It's about improving the reporting, which directly improves the reliability and trustworthiness of the research itself.
It's foundational for good science.
Absolutely. The thinking is, if journals, as the gatekeepers, demand better reporting and clear justification for confounder choices.
Researchers will have to provide it.
Exactly. They'll adapt, and hopefully that leads to stronger, more reliable science for everyone who relies on it. The big question is, will journals enforce this? And how quickly will things change?
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you, our listener, from this deep dive today?
Yeah, what should people walk away thinking?
Well, we've pulled back the curtain on this really crucial methodological detail, how confounding is handled, and found that it often goes unexplained, even in sources we generally consider highly trustworthy. And this isn't about distrusting all science, not at all. It's about engaging with it more critically, more intelligently.
Being an informed reader.
Exactly. Recognizing that not all causal claims are built on the same quality of evidence, and that quality can vary a lot, even within the pages of top journals.
Couldn't agree more. So knowing now that nearly half of observational studies in these major journals don't explicitly justify how they pick their confounders, what questions might you ask next time you see a study, or maybe a news report based on one, or even a policy recommendation?
Yeah. Well, what should you look for?
For example, when you see that headline claiming X causes Y, maybe now you'll pause and think, okay, wait. Did they actually explain how they controlled for other factors? Did they mention confounders? Did they say why they chose them? Was it just a list, or did they mention a causal model, maybe even a DAG?
And if that explanation is missing or feels vague,
That's maybe a little red flag. Not necessarily that the study is wrong, but it might prompt you to dig a bit deeper, or at least view the conclusion with a healthy dose of critical thinking. How might this knowledge actually change your approach to figuring out what truly causes what in this really complex world?
food for thought indeed.
Yeah.
A reminder that critical reading applies even to the most prestigious sources.
Absolutely.
And that's our deep dive for today. We really hope you gain some valuable insights into these hidden complexities of scientific research and maybe feel a bit more equipped to navigate them.
Hope so too.
Until next time.